Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 16 2020 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, I had a very good bounce back week, both against the spread and straight up. I went 7-6-2 against the spread, and straight up I went 12-3. So that equals up to 53 and 80% respectively. And now overall for the year, I'm now 115, 103-5 against the spread. And straight up now, I am 149, 73, and 1, which equals up to 67% for the year. So definitely happy to be at 67%. Have 2 weeks to go. Very excited to try to see if I can get to 68, 69%, which would be great. And we'll see with the final 2 weeks how it will go. So, overall for the year, again, I am 115, 103-5, which is 52.7%, and straight up, I'm now 149, 73, and 1, which equals 67% for the year. What a crazy week the NFL had this week with all the great finishes at the end. The Eagles-Cardinals game was great in terms of how fast-paced it was, and how Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray both played equally to each other. Jalen Hurts had 4 total touchdowns. He did have that intentional grounding. Kyler Murray made a lot of great plays with his legs. He made some good throws to Max Williams and DeAndre Hopkins. Also very surprising, DeAndre Hopkins fumble. And the Cardinals actually now have a non-losing record for the first time since 2017, and the first time in the Cliff Kingsbury era. So he's definitely improved the team enough to keep his job. But that was a fantastic finish. The Chiefs-Saints game lived up to the hype, and I thought that Patrick Mahomes and Breeze played really well. Perspective-wise, even though Drew Brees did start out the worst start of his career, starting out 0-6, but he was able to rebound nicely, having 3 touchdowns and the 1 interception early in the game to L'Jarius Sneed. And Patrick Mahomes did Patrick Mahomes things by throwing for another 200-plus yards and 3 touchdowns, and with one of the throws of the year, the 1 touchdown to Mecole Hardman in the back of the end zone. Nobody expected Mahomes to throw that. Everybody thought that ball was going out of bounds. But he and maybe Aaron Rodgers, the only 2 people that could make throws, or Russell Wilson, hence Tyler Lockett a couple years ago. They are the only few quarterbacks that can make those kind of throws in those moments. But what a great game. I do think that could be a Super Bowl preview, though we'll have to see what happens at Breeze. How rested up is he? Can he continue to play at that level? Are the Saints going to be in a position? I don't know. But I honestly felt with the Chiefs winning that game with how effortlessly they played. I think it's the Chiefs against the field in the Super Bowl, and I think the Chiefs beat any NFC team that comes out. That was just my perspective from that game. When you look at some of the other games that went around, I want to congratulate the Seahawks for making the playoffs, beating Washington 20-15. I thought that the Seahawks running game had a great day, carried up by Carlos Hyde and Russell Wilson, having their 2 longest rushes of the year. And for the Seahawks in general, that 50-yard run was the longest run the Seahawks had the entire season. They held the Washington defensive line, which is one of the best in generating pressure, to no sacks. And I was really impressed with how Seattle's defense clamped down on Dwayne Haskins throughout most of the game. He had 2 picks. He threw the ball 55 times and didn't even get 300 yards. So they really missed Antonio Gibson. They really couldn't run the ball through Seattle's solid run defense. And I do think Seattle is a good team, that they had the momentum, and you can trust Russ enough to make more good plays than bad. And I feel like they are kind of now the dark horse team in the NFC to get to the Super Bowl. Where with the other team I said last week, the Rams, they had the upset of the year, losing to the New York Jets 23-20 in Los Angeles. So Sam Darnold goes back to LA, and he still proves he's ruling LA, hence his USC days. So horrifying loss for the Rams. Takes away every credible win and every ounce of credibility that they had entering this part of the year. And honestly, I think the Rams, they could be in jeopardy if, with their schedule, they could lose out and be out of the playoffs outright, depending on what happens. Or probably not, because I think they beat the Bears, and the Vikings are the worst record. So they'll probably get in maybe off a back end instead of the momentum they wanted. But what a humiliating, pathetic, and disappointing loss. 17-point favorites entering the game, and they lose the game outright. What a shocking loss. And but for the Jets, congratulations for the team for winning. But I feel bad for the Jets fans because they just lost Trevor Lawrence. They would have the number 2 pick in the draft, and the Jacksonville Jaguars now are on the clock at number 1. So best of luck to the Jets. Maybe the Jags win. I probably don't think so with their remaining schedule of Chicago and Indianapolis. Yeah, I don't feel good in your guys' shots of getting number 1 pick back. So Justin Fields would be a nice replacement present, or you can just try to sell your number 2 pick and get a bounty full of picks to add to your war chest. But who knows? So I feel happy for the players. I feel horrible for the fans. But the Jets, there will not be a winless team, and Adam Gase still will get fired with one of the worst records in the NFL, even with that huge upset win. Alright, and I'll talk throughout the rest of the games as I go on through our picks. Alright, so time for my picks this week. So, on Friday, Christmas Day. Can't remember the last time the NFL actually played on Christmas Day. If somebody could look that up, that'd be great in the comments. When the 6-8 Minnesota Vikings go to the 10-4 New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints are 7-point favorites in this game. I like New Orleans here -7 and New Orleans straight up. Then on Saturday, we have a triple header on Saturday once again. When the 9-5 Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to the 5-9 Detroit Lions. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 9.5-point favorites in this game. I like Tampa Bay here -9.5, and Tampa Bay is straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-9 San Francisco 49ers go to the 8-6 Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I like Arizona here -3.5, and Arizona is straight up. Then the next game, when the 9-5 Miami Dolphins go to the 7-7 Las Vegas Raiders. Miami Dolphins are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I like Miami here -2.5, and Miami is straight up. Then the next game on Sunday, when the 4-10 Atlanta Falcons go to the 13-1 Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs are 10.5-point favorites in this game. I like Atlanta here +10.5, but give me the Kansas City Chiefs straight up. Then the next game, when the 10-4 Indianapolis Colts go to the 12-3, or the 12-2 or 11-3 Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I like it an upset here. Give me the Indianapolis Colts here +2.5, and Indianapolis straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-10 Carolina Panthers go to the 6-8 Washington Football Team. The Washington Football Team are 2.5-point favorites in this game. This game is so close with all the different variables with quarterbacks and injuries and talent and consistency. I'm going to hedge this one. So I'm going to take the Washington Football Team here straight up. I'll give you the Carolina Panthers +2.5. Then the next game, when the 7-7 Chicago Bears go to the 1-13 Jacksonville Jaguars. The Chicago Bears are 7.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Chicago Bears here -7.5, and Chicago straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-9 New York Giants go to the 9-5 Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are 12.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the New York Giants here +12.5, but Baltimore straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-11 and 3-10 Cincinnati Bengals go to the 5-9 Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are 9-point favorites in this game. Give me the Houston Texans here -9, and Houston Texans straight up. Then the next game, when the 10-4 Cleveland Browns go to the 1-13 New York Jets. Cleveland Browns are 9.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Cleveland Browns here -9.5, and Cleveland straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-9 Denver Broncos go to the 5-9 Los Angeles Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me the Los Angeles Chargers here -3, and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. Then the next game, when the 9-5 Los Angeles Rams go to the 10-4 Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks are 2-point favorites in this game. I like, in an upset here, the Los Angeles Rams +2, and the LA Rams straight up. Then in the next game, when the 4-9-1 Philadelphia Eagles go to the 5-9 Dallas Cowboys. The Philadelphia Eagles are 1.5-point favorites in this game in the NFC East deciding game, or in one of the two final deciding games, because the loser of this game is eliminated from playoff contention. I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles here -1.5. Philadelphia Eagles straight up. Then in the Sunday night game, when the 10-4 Tennessee Titans go to the 11-3 Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I like Green Bay here -3.5, and Green Bay straight up. And then finally, in the Monday night game, when the 10-4 Buffalo Bills go to the. I'm sorry. Yeah, the 10-4 Buffalo Bills go to the 6-8 New England Patriots. The Buffalo Bills are 7-point favorites in this game. I like the Buffalo Bills here -7 and the Buffalo Bills straight up. All right, so time for my quick thoughts on each game. The New Orleans Saints over the Minnesota Vikings. I am taking the New Orleans Saints in this game here because after what I've seen out of the Minnesota Vikings, I just don't believe in their defense. David Montgomery and Mitch Trubisky had a very nice and solid game running the ball effectively. I think David Montgomery had over 160 yards. He outplayed Dalvin Cook, who, by the way, I think for the 7th straight time this year went over 100 scrimmage yards. He's been fantastic. Jefferson played well, and the Vikings offense did everything they could. Conklin made some nice receptions down the stretch. I thought Irv Smith, he had an okay game. But the Vikings, just in general, I think they have shown that they can produce offense on a consistent level. And Dan Bailey didn't miss any kicks, so he had a nice day. But just watching that defense just get shredded by Darryl Mooney, Allen Robinson making plays, Cole Kmet. And just the Bears, every time they needed to move the ball, they were able to get some third down conversion to get in the field goal range, to keep the lead at 10, to keep the lead at 6. Every time the Vikings needed a stop that could have given them a chance, they couldn't get it more often than not. And the final sequence there, Cousins tried to throw up a big ball, a big Hail Mary throw, got knocked down by a couple of Bears defenders. And it's just, I think the Vikings, they are officially going to be out of playoff contention after this week. It's a very disappointing season for the Vikings after having that good stretch in the middle of the year where they won 3 or 4 straight or 4 out of 5. Everybody thought they might have had a shot, but I think playing the Saints team with a Drew Brees that's getting, more comfortable, playing more effectively. I thought he had a decent game. No Michael Thomas for the next 2 weeks due to him being placed on IR for the rest of the regular season. He should be back for the postseason. I just think the Saints, they know what's at stake here. They're trying to somehow compete with the Packers, and they're going to be playing motivated. And I think they're going to be motivated because people are going to say, well, the Vikings have had the Saints number over the last couple times. The last 2 playoff games and 2 of the last 3 years, they have been able to beat the Saints. But the one time they played in the regular season a couple years ago with Cousins and Brees won on a primetime game on Sunday Night Football. I think the very similar situation will happen here. I think the Vikings defense is decimated with injuries. Eric Kendricks has missed 3 straight games with a calf injury. Their secondary's been banged up. And I just don't have faith in the Vikings defense to stop Brees in this offense with a little more momentum and just more consistency offensively. And the defensive line for New Orleans, they harassed Mahomes all day yesterday. So I think they definitely can generate that same type of pressure against the Vikings offensive line with Kirk Cousins behind there. And Kirk Cousins can't make the plays that Mahomes could to win the game, and that'll be the difference right there. So that's like the New Orleans Saints here -7, the New Orleans Saints straight up. The next game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Detroit Lions. This is one to where I'm taking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here because the Bucs showed you in the second half how effective of a football team they are. They were down 17 points, 24, I believe, to 7, and they ended up winning the game 31-24 off the touchdown from Tom Brady to Antonio Brown, his first touchdown reception since week 2 of last year. So when I look at this, I think for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that was a motivating and confidence-building victory that they can propel into these final 2 games against the Falcons again and the Lions. I think that they were able to defensively do a nice job through the second half. They limited the running game for Todd Gurley and Ito Smith and Brian Hill through the second half. They generated at least 3 or more sacks in the second half, where in the first half, Matt Ryan had a clean pocket. Their secondary came up with some big plays on Russell Gage and Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, though, had a very good game overall, and happy belated birthday to him. His birthday was yesterday. And I just really liked what I saw of the Bucs in the second half. I think that's going to carry them into the postseason, where I don't think they're going to get to the Super Bowl, but they at least, have gotten much further along. And with the Patriots being eliminated from playoff contention, I really feel like for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they won the Tom Brady won the Belichick-Brady debate for this year at least. And when I look at the Detroit Lions, they played the Titans, and the Titans for the most part were just going up and down through the Detroit defense. at will. There was that moment where there was a nice athletic play from one of the Detroit defensive linebackers who sacked Tannehill in the end zone for a safety, and they were able to score and get it from a 6-point game. But just as the game went on, Derrick Henry just kept pounding the football consistently at will. Tannehill had some really nice completions. They had a couple big turnovers. And I just kind of feel like, again, if the Lions can hang around with the Bucs, they could. I just feel like the same type of things could happen to where when the Bucs needed to stop against Atlanta, they got it. They got the punts. They got the first downs. If this game is close, because you can look at the Detroit Lions, they're going, and Stafford also left the game due to a coach's decision. So remember, he's not really 100% either. He's feeling a really nagging rib injury and a right thumb injury. So he may not be able to finish the game. And if it's Chase Daniel against the Bucs defense, good luck to Chase Daniel. Do I think the Lions can compete? Sure. They've shown that their offense under Bevel has been more consistent, and they've been able to score at a higher clip or at a good clip. And the Bucs secondary, through the first half, got shredded by Matt Ryan, and the Bucs offense only put up 60 yards total offense through the first half. So anything is possible. But if you're going to tell me, okay, take Brady or Stafford, take the Bucs staff or the Lions staff, I'll take the Bucs staff every day of the week, twice on Sunday in this game. Just due to the fact of how consistent they're playing. Brady's playing better than Stafford, and they should be able to run the ball if Ronald Jones can get off the COVID list in a more effective way, or Fournette can do a good job as well with their running game. So that's all I like Tampa Bay here, -9.5. Tampa Bay straight up. The next game, the Arizona Cardinals over the San Francisco 49ers. This is one to where I'm going to take the Arizona Cardinals here because the Cardinals overall have been able to play more, competitive football and more consistent football for the last couple weeks compared to the Niners. The Niners, and I said this to everybody last week, and I will say it again, Kyle Shanahan, if he fails again in his 5th year, needs to get fired, and at the very least deserves way more criticism for having that pathetic football team out there every single week losing close games. And the best part of that thing for me was seeing C.J. Beathard, who should have started at least after the Eagles game, or should have been the starting quarterback moving forward. I don't know why, and I was a Nick Mullins fan originally, but I've watched Nick Mullins play over the last several weeks, and the guy just keeps turning it over, and just keeps putting the Niners in a massive hole. I can't believe they still scored 33 points from the 4 turnovers that Mullins had. I digress. But I want to see Kyle Shanahan get more openly criticized. This man is a horrible head coach. Through 4 years with the 49ers, Jim Harbaugh, and I understood why they got rid of him because of the friction between the front office. Jim Harbaugh had 49 total wins. After Jim Harbaugh left and you went through the Chip Kelly and the Jim Tom Sula run of those 3 years, Kyle Shanahan is not that much better than Jim Tom Sula or Chip Kelly, besides that 1 year, okay? Yeah, he's got the Super Bowl, okay? But he's not doing that much better. To have a 28, he's only won 6 games without Jimmy Garoppolo, but he's been in every one of those games. So that's not on the Niners staff. That's not on the Niners offensive line or the injuries at running backs or all that. That's on Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan is one of the most overrated coaches in the entire league. He's a great offensive mind and the best offensive coordinator. But as a head coach, the Niners fans need to realize this guy is not what everybody thinks he is. And next year, he needs to be on one of the hottest of hot seats. And if he doesn't get Stafford or Matt Ryan, he will be fired, and deservedly so. So, my little diatribe there with the Niners. It goes back to that. I know George Kittle could play, and that'd be a massive thing, even though I don't understand why George Kittle was playing. They're out of playoff contention. If he gets hurt over, the final 2 games, what does that do? Raheem Mostert left the game. Jeff Wilson, came in again. Telvin Coleman came in. They had some other, big injuries. And it's just something where if Nick Mullins is starting, I think the Cardinals defense with that pass rush, Hassan Reddick has been a monster the last 2 weeks. They will get after Nick, and it will cause him more turnovers and mistakes. That gets the Cardinals his victory. They won last time, week 1, in a slight upset, 24-20 over the Niners. And the Cardinals have gotten, consistent or, they've played a much better level of football compared to the 49ers, which have been the, close loser. They've been the pretty losers that Kyle Shanahan, has built for the last 3 of his last 4 seasons. That's what Kyle Shanahan's team has predominantly been, a pretty loser with all those 1-score losses. Could the Niners win this game? Sure. They have some defensive talent and Nick Mullins can make, 2 or 3 plays every few drives to, string things together. Brandon Ayurik's had a nice year. But with no Debo, for the rest of the year, Jimmy's not coming back. Raheem Mostert, you don't know if he's going to be able to come back in. The secondary is kind of shot at this point with some of the injuries they've had to Jimmy Ward, to Sherman, to Mosley, to everybody on the Niners. I just think the Cardinals are just more prepared and more focused and playing at a much better level compared to the 49ers right now. So that's like the Arizona Cardinals here, -3.5, and the Arizona Cardinals straight up. The next game, the Miami Dolphins over the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a game to where I'm taking the Miami Dolphins based on the fact that the Miami Dolphins have played much better football, and Brian Flores is a much better coach right now than John Gruden. John Gruden, for the second year in a row, after starting out 6-2, he's lost 4 of his last 5, or to get to a 7-7 mark. So he has, basically for the second year in a row, collapsed this team into out of playoff contention. I thought that the Raiders defense looked absolutely dreadful against Justin Herbert, who was throwing bomb after bomb to Guyton, to Allen, to Hunter Henry, to Mike Williams. He was getting whatever he wanted up and down the field against the Las Vegas Raiders defense. And I know Tua, he may not have as much nearly talented weapons, but I think Miami's running game, their offensive line, and their defense will smother Marcus Mariota when they play, who will probably be starting due to Derek Carr's groin injury. Do I think the Raiders have a chance? Maybe. It's a rookie quarterback. Tua was kind of up and down. He really didn't have that much, throwing yards. He did have the one interception to J.C. Jackson in the red zone, which was really significant. And honestly, I feel like with the Dolphins, that they know what their path is. It's simple. Win out, they get the 7 seed, they're in. And I feel like with the Raiders, they're just going to try to hold on to some credibility. And I think Tua's got a much easier matchup. The Raiders' corners are horrible. Jonathan Abram has been up and down. Henry Ruggs may not be back, or he should be back, but he may not be back. And it's Mariota. It's a cool game for Mariota and Tua. Tua looked up to Mariota back in high school, back in Hawaii, so I'm pretty sure for him that's awesome. But I just look at the Miami Dolphins and say, this team should thoroughly be better than the Raiders, and Gruden should be outcoached by Flores in a massive way. They have better kicker, they have a better stable of running backs, they don't make nearly as many mistakes. Xavier Howard should be arguably the defensive player of the year, while he's been playing at cornerback. And I think the Dolphins come into Las Vegas pretty prepared, pretty motivated, and just put out an absolute coaching clinic against the Raider team that can compete offensively, but at the end of the day, I think Tua makes one fewer mistake than Mariota, and that's the difference in the game, and that's how the Dolphins win. Sounds like the Miami Dolphins here, -2.5, and the Miami Dolphins straight up. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Atlanta Falcons. This is fairly simple. The Chiefs are the best team in football. They have been rolling week after week after week. I feel like the Chiefs are a team that, kind of can just go into auto drive for the next 2 weeks. They should get the 1 seed just by rolling out of bed. I am concerned about the Clyde Edwards-Helaire injury. I think that is a significant injury to look forward in the postseason. They'll be at the final 2 weeks, and if they maintain the 1 seed, they at least get the bye going into the divisional rounds. That basically IR for Helaire there. And I think the Chiefs, the one thing you have to notice is that they've been in a lot of one-score games. And you could say, look, they keep winning games, and I'm somebody that values winning, so I will acknowledge that, and that's fair. But I do think, though, that the Falcons, with that 10.5-point spread, they have been playing competitive football pretty much since Raheem's got there. They have not had a bad, game in terms of just looking bad as a whole team. They keep choking. So I think that's where I think Raheem Morris, where he was 4-4 entering the game against Tampa, he will drop probably to 4-7, which should get him out of the running for being a head coach. I know you could say, well, I was motivated for him, and you to set up the Raiders, he probably might get the job. That was back then. He choked that game against the Chargers, which I think was the real difference, and he hasn't looked good since, and he just blew a 17-point lead to Tom Brady and the Bucs offense after holding them to 60 yards just in the first half. But I think, again, with Kansas City winning all those one-score games, 10.5 points with this Falcons offense, if Julio Jones comes back against the Chiefs secondary, which at times has been, pretty shaky, I think that is way too many points. This is going to be an offensive-based game. Basically, I'm just going to take Mahomes over Ryan in a shootout, and I'll take the Chiefs defense being able to make one or two more stops compared to the Falcons defense, which is the second worst pass defense in the entire league. Only Seattle's is worse. And that's why I'm going with Kansas City. This should be a great offensive game, and if you have anybody in fantasy and Matt Ryan or Mahomes or Hill, this is going to be a great game because they're going to be throwing the ball or moving the ball up and down the field. But at the end of the day, I think the Chiefs, they're just on too good of a roll. That until they lose, you just have to keep picking them until, they lose finally. That's all I can see. Chiefs here straight up at the Atlanta Falcons plus 10.5. The next game, the Indianapolis Colts over the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is one to where I am taking the Colts here in a slight upset based on the fact I feel like the Colts are a much better complete team right now. The Colts defense is playing better than Pittsburgh's defense. The Colts can run the ball. The Colts, Phillip Rivers, are playing solid, consistent football. T.Y. Hilton and Zach Pascal are making plays. Jack Doyle is making some plays. The Colts defense can get stops. They can cause turnovers. Deshaun Watson, through 2 games against the Colts, had 4 or 5 turnovers. The teams had 4 to 6 turnovers. Everybody else in the league, he's had about 5 turnovers going into that game. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're not going to be able to run the ball that well. I think that the Indianapolis offensive line will limit the Pittsburgh pass rush, and I think the Colts can just keep everything in front of them because Ben basically is playing, he's getting the ball out quicker than he has ever in his career, and it's essentially where if you just keep in front of their receivers and let him dink and dunk, you can get to manageable third downs. I think the Colts can pass rush at a good rate with their front 4. If they have to blitz, I think they can use the maniac, Darius Leonard, who made the game-winning play yesterday against the Houston Texans. I really like the Colts in this matchup based on the fact that they can limit the Pittsburgh defense. They can run the ball more effectively. Jonathan Taylor is the best rookie running back in the entire league over Hilaire and over, whatever other rookie running back you want to put in. And he's played sensationally, or Johnny Robinson. I think he's better than Johnny Robinson. And I think that ball control with that defense and Rivers being able to just protect the ball and make some nice plays against a banged-up Pittsburgh secondary, which may still not have Joe Hayden due to concussion, I think all that together formulates into a Colts win this Sunday. It should be a great game, and would I be surprised if Pittsburgh won? No, because I think Pittsburgh is a solid team, and they'll have a little bit of momentum, and they also know kind of like this is a great statement game to show that the last couple of weeks with Washington and Buffalo, that Pittsburgh is, could even go one and done against Miami. At least they could show you, if they beat Indianapolis, that they definitely should be able to beat Miami to get to the second round at least. But then after that, who knows who they draw after that. And for the Colts, with my picks, that could put the Colts in first place in the AFC South, which could definitely shift the balance of power and give the Colts the home field advantage against the Titans in their playoff game if that happens. If that's how the chips fall. So that's why I like the Indianapolis Colts here, plus 2.5, and the Indianapolis Colts straight up. The next game, the Washington football team over the Carolina Panthers. This one, I am going with the home team. The home team and the defense. Look, Carolina did Carolina football, and this is why I took the Carolina Panthers plus 9. I knew that they would be, going around and being competitive in a game against Green Bay, and look, Rodgers and them played really well through the first half. They were throwing the ball around. Aaron Jones, he was really the big star of the game. He had over 100 yards rushing and a touchdown or 1 or 2 touchdowns in the game. But by the end of the second half, Bridgewater started making some plays. He made some nice throws to DJ Moore. He made some nice big third down conversions. The Panthers got 5 sacks on Aaron Rodgers, so they did a really good job there. And they ended up and I appreciate Matt Rule for doing the backdoor cover by having Joey Sly go out there and kick a field goal and then try an onside, which they failed at. But I like what the Panthers have been able to do, and I think the only reason I went Washington is that defense. Is that I can trust the Washington defensive line. Bridgewater had a tough time through the latter part of the game against the Packers pass rush. The Washington pass rush is much better, and if it's even Haskins, or if it's Haskins and Alex, either one, I think Alex and Haskins can make 1 or 2 more plays with a better running game, because Ron Rivera said yesterday he hopes to have Antonio Gibson back, which would be a massive get, because I don't know if Christian McCaffrey is going to play. I would just sit him out the rest of the year. They're out of playoff contention. There's no point in injuring him in the last week of the year for a meaningless game that didn't mean anything except hurting your draft pick if you won, helping a draft pick if you lost. I'm going to take the Washington football team here because I'm going to trust the defense, and they're at home. If this game was in Carolina, I would take Carolina to win this game. And in a fun way, I'll use last year. Ron Rivera, what a great, irony there. His final game coaching the Panthers was against the Washington football team last year. One of Dwayne Haskins' first wins, or, I would argue, I think maybe his second or third one ever was against the Washington football team. That was where Darius Geis and Adrian Peterson had a monster game on the ground, and they won that game after that. And after that, Rivera got fired, ended up on the Washington football team. So, in some ways, I think for Ron Rivera, they're also going to be extra motivated for him getting to play his former squad. He knows a lot of those guys on that staff. He knows their strengths and weaknesses and can work with Terry and the offensive coordinator, Scott Turner. They know the tendencies of the talent. They may not know the schemes Matt Rule runs, but they know the strengths and weaknesses of basically the entire Panthers team for the most part in terms of talent. And I think that they'll use that to their advantage and win this game. Would I be surprised if Carolina won this game? Not at all, especially if Haskins wins. That's why I would tell everybody to take Carolina plus 2.5, because if Smith plays, I feel good that Washington wins. If Haskins plays, I think that they still win, but I would probably tell you, smart money would be on Carolina pulling off a slight upset. So there you go. So that's why I like Washington here straight up at Carolina plus 2.5. The next game, the Chicago Bears over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Chicago Bears have been rolling for the last 3 weeks for Trubisky. 30-plus points in 3 straight games. Absolutely phenomenal. Trubisky's been able to make some nice, catches, some nice sequences. David Montgomery's having the best stretch of his career. He's been running really, really well. The Bears defense at times been able to get, the key stops when they needed them. They got a big third down stop late in the game on Dalvin Cook when they just ran it up the gut. That was a huge stop. They got the 4th down stop early on. And this is just a Bears team that, I feel like with Trubisky, who now, at least going into next year, should be on the roster. I don't know if he's going to be starting next year for the Bears, but with how many games they've won, they are not going to be in position to get a quarterback, and I don't think Nick's not the answer. Nick never was. Nick is basically the best version of Matt Flynn, the Green Bay Matt Flynn that anybody could have. He only works in one place, and at that place, he's gone. He looks like a below-average starter or a bust of a, contract sign. And it's kind of also a nice, unique game for Foles as well. If he was starting, it would be against his former team, which got absolutely railroaded by the Baltimore Ravens. Not a big surprise. But I just feel like with the Bears defense, they should be able to smother Minshew and Robinson. The Jags just, have basically given up. They don't know who their quarterback is. They try to make some plays. They have some okay pieces. But the way they could not stop Lamar running or throwing, or J.K. Dobbins getting to the outside and breaking off chunk plays at a time, I don't think the Bears' offense is as dynamic or as productive, but I do think the Bears' offense can just genuinely just ram it down the Jaguars through defensive line, and Trubisky can play a solid game. And I feel like Trubisky will make less mistakes than Minshew, and Trubisky, is in a much better comfort zone and a consistency that I have not seen from Gardner Minshew or Jake Luton or any of the Jaguars quarterbacks since this year began. It is still amazing to me that Indianapolis somehow lost to that team in Week 1. The one loss that's got the Titans still in first place is that Week 1 loss. Crazy, one of the weirdest games of the year. And the Jags ever since then have not won, and it looked like the Jaguars that everybody thought the Jaguars were going to be this year. So that's why I like Chicago here minus 7.5 and Chicago straight up. The next game, the Baltimore Ravens over the New York Giants. I am taking the Baltimore Ravens here based on the fact that the Giants offensively just don't look great. They only scored 6 points against the Browns defense. They could not run the ball. Colt McCoy was starting. He looked like Colt McCoy. The Browns were able to run it down their throat, especially with right guard Nick Harris, who was the third guy on the depth chart because the first guy got hurt, and then they brought in their backup and he got hurt. And I just look at the Ravens and go, I think this game is going to be one of those to where I think the Giants can be more competitive, and it's Lamar, so it's a different type of quarterback to where I think he can make some plays, but he also kind of showed early on in the game against Jacksonville that he can make some mistakes that other more traditional quarterbacks would not make, especially with that one interception. So I do think the Giants' defense can cause him some frustration with how athletic they are, the type of pressures they have, the complexities Patrick Graham makes with his blitz calls or his disguises. So I definitely think that the Ravens can definitely hang around this game much longer than people expect. I don't think it's going to be like Jacksonville, where off the gun, they're not even close. It's not even a close game. But I'm taking the Ravens here. Lamar's just playing much better than Jones or McCoy. The Giants just feel demoralized. Giants, I don't think will be able to stop the running game that we have. The Ravens' defense, I think, will be somewhat of an interesting thing. We didn't have Marcus Peters. We didn't have Calais Campbell. We didn't have a couple other players. But I feel like it's going to be kind of like the same, where I don't think we're going to need these players against the Giants team that offensively, they really only have two main weapons on the outside in Golden Tate and Sterling Shepard. Evan Ingram's kind of comes and goes. And I think that Deshaun Elliott can hold his own against Evan Ingram. And I think that they're not going to be able to run the ball, as well, and make some plays. And Daniel Jones, that's one thing also the Ravens know how to do. They know how to cause turnovers. I think they've had a turnover in about 30-plus straight games, one of the longest streaks in the NFL. And there's Daniel Jones, through all his starts, had 49 fumbles and about 25 career starts. So this guy will give us at least one or two turnovers in this game, either by a pick or by a fumble, due to our pass rush going against a Giants offensive line, which has not played really well for the most part this year. And I think the Ravens get an easy victory off of that. Like I said, the 12.5, I'll give respect to the Giants, where their run, has been a little more consistent, and they, seem to play competitive through games early on. So that's why I think the 12.5 is too much. But the Ravens should get this one here fairly easily based off their running game. Lamar playing, more effective football, and the Giants just not having really being able to generate any offense with either Jones fumbling or any other issue. Sounds like the Baltimore Ravens here straight up, the New York Giants plus 12.5. The next game, the Houston Texans over the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm taking the Houston Texans here, -9, because the Bengals are one of the worst teams in the league. You have basically the Jets, the Bengals, and the Jags. The Texans, they play good football more often than not, and I feel really bad for Deshaun over the last 3 weeks, basically playing really good, clean football against the Colts, with everything he has around him. David Johnson kind of had a nice bounce-back game. He got that 137 touchdown to Chris Hansen, which was a really good throw. And it came down right to the goal line once again. He throws the pass to Kikuchi, who fumbles the football, very much reminiscent of what happened just 2 weeks ago when Deshaun Watson tried to snap the ball. He fumbled the football, the Colts recovered, and the game was over. Same exact thing happened. That is the ultimate and worst deja vu that anybody could have. And I just think that the Bengals, Brandon Allen's hurt, so it's Ryan Finley. So the Houston defense should be able to beat up Ryan Finley on a pretty good clip. Could the Bengals be competitive? Sure. It's Zach Taylor. He's shown that, through his backups, that he can kind of hang around games. But after what I saw against Dallas, I kind of feel like that team's just given up and quit. And I think Houston, this is one of those things, it's kind of like with Jacksonville. Houston is maybe as not as good, or, is kind of equal talented there on all positions. When in this kind of game, take Deshaun Watson over whatever the Bengals have left that are out there. So that's why I like Houston -9 here, and Houston straight up. The next game, the Cleveland Browns over the New York Jets. I'm taking the Browns here. The Browns are more prepared. The Browns are, more consistent. They have a better offensive line to hold up against the Jets' pass rush. The Jets are just, still not very good. I think Baker's going to be able to outplay Sam Darnold. He did back in week 2. Sam Darnold actually, I think Sam Darnold missed that game. I'm sorry. Sam Darnold missed that game. And then his backup got hurt, so I think that's a little bit of a revenge factor there for the Jets. But I feel like with the Browns, they're just too dominant right now. Baker's playing at an extremely high level. He's only thrown 1 pick over his last 6 games. He is, Jarvis Landry's getting in the action. Austin Hooper's getting in the action. The Browns defense is generating good enough pressure. And I don't think the Browns are going to be, I don't think Baker under pressure is going to play nearly as bad as Jared Goff, and I think the Browns' offensive line can hold up at a much better rate than the Rams' offensive line did yesterday. Should be an interesting game, because I do think the Jets, hey, maybe the Jets will just keep winning and keep, plummeting their draft pick, just kind of like the Philadelphia Eagles did back when O.J. Simpson was the number 1 pick, and ended up with the 3rd overall pick, and he didn't get O.J. Simpson. But I'm taking the Browns here. The Browns have played pretty just much consistent football at a rate. The Jets, even though they got the biggest upset of the year, they're still the Jets, and one of the worst teams in the league. So the Browns will just continue to show that, against the Jets, the Browns are the new Browns, where the Jets are just the same old Jets. So that's why Cleveland here -9.5 and Cleveland straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Denver Broncos. I'm taking the LA Chargers here because I have not taken them the last 2 weeks, and it has bit me in the rear end, and they have been able to close football games. That's good enough for me to look at the Denver Broncos, who keep getting injuries. Drew Lock keeps, going up and down. They really, can't run the ball. And I just think, again, if you're going to get into this game, remember just back in week 5, this was a 17-point lead or back in week 7 or 8, I'm sorry. Herbert had a massive lead. He played extremely well. And I think that for me, this is one of those games to where the Chargers are going to win based off of Herbert. I think that the Broncos, they pretty much have noticed their fate. The Bills, Josh Allen was, shredding them apart with Diggs, with Beasley, with Dawson Knox. The defense kept getting after Drew Lock, Jerry Hughes had a 21-yard fumble return for a touchdown. I think the Chargers are going to be motivated. They understand what happened last time, and they want to, show the Broncos that they are a much better team. And it's the fact that, again, the Chargers over the last couple weeks have shown you with the kick by Badgley and the overtime touchdown 1-yard rush by Herbert, they maybe have started to figure it out and close football games, which is something the Chargers don't usually do. And it comes down to me as well. I just think the Chargers are just a much better all-around team. Keenan Allen, for the 3rd time in his career, has over 100 receptions in the last 4 years. He's done really well. And I think the Denver defense, they're missing some of their corners. They're missing Duke. They're missing AJ. They're missing Jarrell. That defense has been shredded, and I think the Chargers, just at home, are the better team and the more team to have optimism moving forward compared to the Broncos. So that's why I like the Los Angeles Chargers here, -3, and the LA Chargers straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Rams over the Seattle Seahawks. This is one to where I am taking the Los Angeles Rams based on the fact that the LA Rams, I believe, have not lost back-to-back games all year. And every time they have a bad game, they usually bounce back with a win in a good way. When they lost to the Dolphins, they bounced back. When they lost to, I'm trying to think who else did the Rams lose to. When they lost to the Niners, they bounced back the next week. When they lost to the Niners again, they bounced back the next week against Arizona. So the Rams have been usually able to bounce back at a pretty good rate. And that is, again, the worst loss. Even Sean McVay said it was embarrassing. And to me, I look at the Rams saying they understand what's at stake here. Because the Seahawks, if they win that game, the Seahawks win the NFC West, and arguably, depending on what happens, may get the 2 seed, or may, I guess probably not, but they have to go on the road, and they would go to, right now, they would go to the NFC East winner. So you could argue, okay, the Rams are not in a bad spot. They'd much rather have the home game instead of having to go the 3 straight road games moving on. And for the Seahawks, this would be massive just because they would get to play Tampa Bay right now first, being the 3 seed, and let's say somehow, the number 1 seed, the Packers, somehow lose to one of the teams, they have a chance to get the home game against Seattle in the NFC Championship game. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but they have a shot. And I think, for Seattle, this is something that last year they thought they were close. It came down to the very end. It came down to literally the 3-inch line against the Niners. They would love to have that opportunity, this year again, to close the door on the division and just get to go into the, week 17 in a game where if they started, they could do it. If they got the rest, they could do the same there. And I just think the Rams, they're going to show up in a much better way against the banged-up Seattle offensive line. And they can say, well, look, Matt, the Washington defensive line was loaded, but they didn't have anything. And it's like, yeah. And also, again, I know Seattle's defense. Cam Akers had a rough day, but he got hurt. But I think the Rams will be able to run the ball a little more effectively. The Rams, the last time they were in Seattle, they lost off the edge. I think, they just lost off a kick at the end. And I really like what the Rams, do in these bounce-back games. They usually have been able to bounce back every single time they lose. And I'm just going to keep that, going into this moment. The Seahawks have only won 1 time over the last 3 or 4 years against the Seahawks in Seattle. And the Seahawks, even back to Jeff Fisher, back in 2014, he could win. back in 2016, he could win these games in Seattle at a pretty good clip the Rams have been able to do. And I think, again, the Rams know what's at stake. They basically can win the division with a win, getting the head-to-head tiebreaker over Seattle, no matter what happens. And I think, at the end of the day, the Rams' defense outdoes the Seattle offense in this game, in a bounce-back game for the Rams. So that's like the LA Rams here +2, and the LA Rams straight up. The next game, the Philadelphia Eagles over the Dallas Cowboys. I'm taking the Eagles here because I'm going to trust Jalen Hurts over Andy Dalton. Both defenses are bad. Both secondaries are banged up and injured and not good. Both running games are either misused or effective. Both offensive lines are torn to shreds. Both defenses have been pretty bad. Both coaches have been underperforming. Basically, to me, it's like, am I going to trust Jalen or am I going to trust Andy Dalton? And after what I've seen on Jalen Hurts, his first 2 games, I'll trust Jalen Hurts to make more plays in the Cowboys defense than Andy Dalton will against the Eagles defense with the weapons he has. Also, they really weren't able to run the ball, and I don't know if Zeke's going to play, which can be a massive difference. But I'm going to take the Eagles here just on the fact of Jalen Hurts being able to outplay Andy Dalton. Would I be surprised the Cowboys won? Not at all. The Dallas Cowboys have actually been on a better roll. They've won 3 of their last... they could go on a 4-game win streak of win the NFC East if I believe Philadelphia beats Washington next week. So they still have a chance. And I know Andy Dalton has more experience. And the Cowboys just seemed to have maybe a better defensive front right now than the Eagles. But at the end of the day, if everything's equal, you're going to take the better quarterback. And that right now to me is Jalen Hurts over Andy Dalton. Sounds like Philadelphia -1.5 and Philadelphia straight up. The next game, the Green Bay Packers over the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers here, -3.5, based on the fact that the last few times the Packers played the Titans, or they played the Vikings, or they played the Colts, or they played the Bucks, they played a pretty good defense. The Titans' defense is not very good. They had some nice rolls against Detroit, but Detroit's offense was sputtering. They had some fumbles, and they were playing a banged-up Stafford. This is the Titans to where if you're going to give me Matt LaFleur, who was Mike Vrabel's offensive coordinator before he took the Packers job, I will take LaFleur, knowing what Mike Vrabel wants to do, knowing what he has in the Packers' offense and defensive schemes, and I can't trust the Titans in a game to where if they can't stop Aaron Rodgers, Rodgers will win a shootout against Tannehill. Even if Derrick Henry just runs through the entire Packer defensive line, which he could do, I don't think that'll be enough to beat the Packers. They understand how big this game is, and they don't want this pattern of strong running game Minnesota, strong running game Indianapolis, and strong running game Tennessee to beat them, because that would basically mean if you had a strong running game like in Seattle, Seattle could beat Green Bay. New Orleans with Kamara and Murray could beat Green Bay. The Rams with Akers, Henderson, and Malcolm Brown, they could beat the Packers just by dominating the defensive line. And I just think, again, if this goes into a shootout, I'm going to take Aaron Rodgers over Ryan Tannehill in this instance. Should be a great game. I actually am happy for the Titans. They get this Sunday night spotlight to themselves. But in this game, not really a great pass rush. Rodgers should not have a lot of pressure around him. He should be able to outgun Tannehill in a game where Rodgers is second in the MVP, in my opinion, with his 40 TD to 4 interception season. So that's why I like Green Bay here, -3.5, and Green Bay straight up. And finally, the Buffalo Bills over the New England Patriots. I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills here to beat the New England Patriots based on the fact of how good Buffalo has looked and how New England basically, for the first time in 18 years, will not make the playoffs. And for the first time since 2008, they will not win the AFC East. I feel like, and they just lost Stephon Gilmore. He tore his quad, so he's out for the rest of the year. Julian Edelman may come back, but I wouldn't bring him back. There's no point. They're eliminated. They really can't run the ball. Damian Harris is hurt. Cam just still can't seem to make plays. N'Keal Harry's been an absolute bust. The best receiver they have is Jacoby Myers. The 2 tight ends they drafted, they can't even make plays. Winovich has disappeared. Kyle Duggar's disappeared in the secondary. And I just really like what the Bills have been able to do. The Bills, remember last time, back in Week 16 last year, when they went to New England, how close that game was with Brady, and they knew that they probably should have won that game. And I know what the Pats fans are going to say, well, if it wasn't for Cam Newton fumbling in the red zone, we'd probably beat the Bills back in Week 7 or 8 after the Jets game. Fair enough. But if you're looking at these two teams, the Bills are playing at a much crisper, consistent, higher level. Josh Allen is making plays with his feet and his arms. He's had 35-plus touchdowns. Only him and the one Bills quarterback, they said it on the broadcast. They said it on the broadcast, I forget. Only have 35 touchdowns. Or Jim Kelly. I'm sorry, Jim Kelly. Duh. Jim Kelly. He and only Jim Kelly are the only ones with 35-plus touchdowns. Total touchdowns for the Bills franchise. And I just really like what the Bills have been able to do on a consistent basis with their passing game, with their defense, and just their management. You know, like, they have all done a fantastic job. And I think for the Pats, you know, it's a game to where it's going to be weird. You know, for the first time in a while, the Pats are playing a game. They win, it hurts them. If they lose, it helps them, you know, at this point. Should be, you know, a very, again, you know, somber feeling. Probably feels weird, too, for the Bills to be in this game. But I think the Bills, just with their talent, their consistency, and with the Pats' just desire or lack thereof desire to finish the year motivated, I think the Bills easily roll over the Pats to sweep the Pats for the first time probably since, back in the 80s, back in the early 90s. I think you have to go back to the early 90s to where the last time the Bills swept the Pats in a single season. How weird is that to say? So that's like the Buffalo Bills here -7, and the Buffalo Bills straight up. All right, so those are my thoughts and comments for this week. Like, comment, rate, and subscribe. Everybody out there that I'd like to say happy holidays and Merry Christmas, and to everybody out there that watches, you know, my video, everybody out there, please stay safe and enjoy the holiday season with your family. And until next time, this is Matthew and Fanatic signing off. Until next time, so long.